Yes, we all love those big name, big budget, mainstream horror movies and franchises, but there are so many other great horror pictures that, for whatever reason, wind up sneaking way below the radar. And that's the focus here, as we do our best to spotlight some great horror films that even the biggest horror hounds haven't seen. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 awesome horror movies you've probably never seen. Number 10, The Last Showing. Robert Englund is an icon of horror, best known for playing Freddy Krueger or for appearances in the likes of 2001 Maniacs and Urban Legend. However, one Robert Englund movie that often goes under the radar is Phil Hawkins' The Last Showing. A rather minimalist movie, The Last Showing is set in a cinema where a couple of lovebirds take in a late night showing of The Hills of Eyes 2, and where Robert Englund's Stuart works as a projectionist. Dedicated to giving a piece of film the respect it deserves, Stuart is frustrated by the general carelessness and disinterest his colleagues have in the small details of film projection. So much so, he eventually snaps, locks the cinema from the inside, and puts a plan in place to shoot his own real-life horror movie via the building's various CCTV cameras. An understated, calculated figure, Englund's puppeteer is the crazed cat leading the poor, unsuspecting mice through his own sinister maze, and it's great. Plus, The Last Showing was actually filmed 20 minutes away from my house at a local cinema, so that's also a fun little tidbit. Number 9, Cold Prey. Norwegian slasher movie Cold Prey follows 5 snowboarders who take refuge in an abandoned hotel when one of them breaks their ankle. What they don't know, but quickly realise of course, is that the hotel closed in 1975 when the owner's son disappeared, and faster than you can say Mrs. Voorhees' baby boy, they're being chased through the snow by a pickaxe-wielding psycho. So far, so traditional, but director Rohak strings the "he's right behind you" suspense scenes together better than the majority of slashers, with Cold Prey slickly shot and even having in-jokes for fans of The Shining. So well received was Cold Prey in its native Norway. 2 years later saw a prequel release, that would be Cold Prey Resurrection, followed in the footsteps of Halloween 2 by picking things up with our final girl in a hospital setting. Number 8, The Beast Must Die. Playing a little bit like a more sinister Agatha Christie tale, The Beast Must Die has 5 people lured to an eccentric millionaire's electronically bugged estate so that it can be discovered which of the 5 is really a werewolf. In something certainly unique, the film even features a werewolf break where, after all the clues have been shown, viewers are given a 1-minute break to guess who the werewolf actually is. The Beast Must Die is a lot of gimmicky fun, the kind of camp oddity that could only have been made during the 1970s. Plus, it's got Peter Cushing in it, which is always a good time if you ask me. So enjoyable and fast-paced is The Beast Must Die, you'll even look past the fact that the werewolf itself was actually played by a German Shepherd due to the film's low budget. Number 7, Evil Dead Trap. Evil Dead Trap's minimal plot is sketched in during the opening scenes, when the arrival of what purports to be a snuff film prompts a ratings-hungry TV presenter and her crew to journey out to the deserted army base shown on the tape. Once there, they're picked off one by an unseen killer. But when director Toshiharu Ikeda begins dispatching his one-dimensional characters one by one, the movie shifts into high gear, delivering a succession of startling set pieces, all set to a memorable score, and all very much having the feel of the legendary Dario Argento, which is never a bad thing of course. Number 6, Who's Watching Oliver? Released in 2018, Who's Watching Oliver is essentially a fascinating essay on the everyday life of a serial killer. Played by co-writer Russell Jeffrey Banks, Oliver is a loner who lives his days by strict regime and regulation and is extremely socially awkward. He's also a serial killer who's desperately trying to break his murderous habit. Having moved to Thailand, unfortunately Oliver has daily video calls with his mother, who implores him to bring random ladies for her to watch him assault, torture and kill, with those sequences incredibly tough to watch at times. However, there is a ray of light for Oliver when he meets Sophia, a stranger who goes out of her way to make conversation with Oliver, leading to an incredibly awkward yet rather adorable date for the two. With Oliver seeing Sophia as possibly his last chance at normalcy, he still has the tight grip of his mother urging him to give in to his worst urges. Making this even more interesting, the brutal violence and atrocities of Who's Watching Oliver aren't necessarily the focal point of the picture. Instead, these are almost background acts of Oliver's day-to-day, and it all makes for such a compelling, fascinating, and ultimately unsettling watch. Number 5, Rec 3 Genesis. While Rec has a whole host of fans, Rec 2 was somewhat of a dud, meaning that few people bothered to return for Rec 3 Genesis in 2012. Rec 3 largely abandons the found footage format, effectively making fun of the whole subgenre and relocating the narrative to a wedding where zombies are unleashed on the guests. While some may rightly or wrongly accuse Genesis of moving away from genuine dread in favour of humour and gratuitous gore for the sake of gore, it's actually a little refreshing not to have the po-faced seriousness of the prior two movies, with a more playful tone at play here, as highlighted by a zombie being killed by egg whisks, and a character who calls himself Sponge John because the SpongeBob name was taken. Number 4. Poltergeist, Night of the Chicken Dead. As a massive trauma nerd and obviously a close personal friend of Lloyd Kaufman, hey Uncle Lloydie, I couldn't put this video together and not give some love to a trauma movie, and that movie is the excellent Poltergeist, Night of the Chicken Dead. Essentially, Poltergeist centers on a New Jersey chicken joint taken over by zombie chickens. Oh, glorious, glorious trauma. As is often the case, Night of the Chicken Dead has plenty of Bob's satire on consumerism and corporate greed, plus plenty of the usual gore-drenched slapstick that trauma specializes in. Oh, and of course, there's a couple of musical numbers thrown in for good measure too. A smashing time, full of yolks that'll crack you up and gore that'll scramble your mind. Okay, enough of the exemplary puns, let's move on. But Poltergeist, great movie. Number 3, Smothered. From writer-director John Schneider, as in Smallville's Jonathan Kent and the Dukes of Hazzard's Bo Duke, Smothered is a movie a lot of horror fans will get a kick out of solely down to its core cast and how that core cast is used. Here we have a bunch of actors usually associated with playing horror villains. There's Kane Hodder of Jason Voorhees fame. There's Arhe Mihailov, who played Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. There's Don Shanks, who played Michael Myers in Halloween 5. There's Michael Berryman from The Hills of Eyes and loads of other stuff. There's John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And there's Bill Moseley of the Rob Zombie movies, and again, plenty of other projects over the decades. The difference here is these names are all playing fictionalized versions of themselves as they work the convention circuit, only to be offered a well-paying gig to terrorize visitors of a trailer park, where it turns out there's a very real killer present. Throwing some great turns elsewhere from Bria Grant, Amy Grissett, and Rachel Alana Handler, and Smothered makes for just a proper fun time. Number 2, John dies at the end. Oh, where to even begin with this one? John dies at the end it's certainly something. When David sits down to talk to reporter Arnie, played by the ever-great Paul Giamatti, he tells a story about body-snatching beings from other dimensions, talking hot dogs, phone calls from the future, and a celebrity sidekick and a creature made from cuts of meat. Directed by the Phantasm franchise and Bubba Hotep's Don Coscarelli, from a novel by David Wong, John Dies at the End features a new drug called soy sauce that kills most people, but for those who don't die, they get special powers and can literally transcend reality as we know it. It may be a smidge too odd for some, but John Dies at the End will put a smile on the face of many, being a mind-bending horror dark comedy that feels as if the South Park team remade David Lynch's Lost Highway, which is quite the trip. Number 1, Big Bad Wolves. Premiering in 2013 and finally receiving a wider release in 2017, Big Bad Wolves is, without hyperbole, one of the most gripping movies of the past decade or so. It's also darkly humorous at times while still managing to treat its extreme subject matter seriously and with respect. From Aharon Casales and Nabat Papashado, Big Bad Wolves takes place in an Israeli town where several children have been abused and or killed. The main suspect is a schoolteacher named Dror, but chances of convicting him for these crimes are ruined when Mickey, the policeman leading the investigation, gets a little too heavy-handed in his interrogation techniques, resulting in Dror walking free and Mickey suspended from his job. We end up with a scenario where Mickey and the father of one of the killer's victims torture Dror excessively, looking for answers, as the film throws up questions about morality, justice and guilt, and whether these interrogators are doing truly horrendous things to an innocent man. Big Bad Wolves can be a tough watch at times, with some unrelenting, brutal violence on show. But as mentioned, the film manages to somehow drop in elements of dark humour at just the right time. Seriously, this is ridiculously stunning, impactful stuff, and a film absolutely worth hunting down.